Hello all, this is Americanism Part 2 video. This is the second part of the video on Americanism. Earlier you watched Part 1. We are continuing our discussions on the same topic, which is the controversy of Americanism, which is the movement for purism. In 1835, an unknown writer in the Southern Literary Messenger looked forward to the time when we shall no longer see such a term as firstly in a work on metaphysics, nor hear such a double adverb as illy, which is ILLY, on the floor of Congress, no longer hear of an events transpiring before it has become public, nor of an argument being predicated on such and such facts. He stated that the only safeguard against such licenses was the adoption of some common and acknowledged standard. Such a standard exists in the authorized classics of Great Britain. The famous Index Expurgatorius of William Cullen Bryant has often been cited as an example of the purist ideal in journalism. It's a list of words that he excluded from the New York Evening Post, and that seems to have grown up gradually during the years 1829 through 1878, when he was the editor of this well-known newspaper. Many of the expressions he disliked bear the stamp of vulgarity, pretension, haste, and slang, but the only objection to some of them, such as dutiable, presidential, lengthy, which was defended by Webster 50 years before, seems to have been the fact that they were Americanisms. A purist of a rather extreme type was Richard Grant White. In his books called Words and Their Uses, published in 1870, and Everyday English, published in 1880, conformity to the purist ideal and acceptance of the English standard of uses become practically synonymous. In the preface to the former book, he specifically disavows any right of Americans to set up an independent standard. His opinion carried much weight within a certain class of people, a class possessed of a fine, if somewhat old-fashioned, culture. Such people are likely to have the point of view of the purist and to be more or less constantly influenced by English literary tradition. With the establishment during the previous century and the flourishing during the present of a modern tradition in American literature, the authority of English opinion and uses has diminished. Sentiments favoring prescriptivism persist, however, and the purist ideal continues to find expression in the popular press and in lexicographical enterprises. When the Merriam Company published Webster's Third New International Dictionary in 1961, an outpouring of reviews ignored the considerable merits of the dictionary to criticize its restraint in legislating on matters of uses. The inclusion of finalize and normalcy without statements of their acceptability stirred editorial responses of extraordinary emotion and hostility. When the New York Times announced that it would continue to use the second international edition of 1934, Bergen Evans pointed out that The very issue of the times which made the announcement used 153 separate words, phrases, and constructions listed in the Third International, but not in the Second, and 19 others that are condemned in the Second. Evans concluded, quote, anyone who solemnly announces in the year 1962 that he will be guided in matters of English uses by a dictionary published in 1934 is talking ignorant and pretentious nonsense. Unquote. It is no more reasonable to look to a past or a supposed past in American lexicography for guidance in the current use of the language than to look across the ocean. The purest ideal is a manifestation of the same temperament in America as elsewhere in the world. In the United States, it has been guided in past years by a considerable respect for English opinion and uses, and in recent times by what seems to be self confident introspection. In all periods, the purest ideal has made the answers to difficult questions rather easier than they actually are. The judgments that can be asserted for lists of words taken without regard to context, audience, or expository intent imply falsely that linguistic forms have a certain value once and for all, and that the keys to effective writing and speaking can be found in the mastery of a few clear, permanent prescriptions. Now, present differentiation of vocabulary. Except in pronunciation, the distance that the English language in America has traveled in its separation from that of England is chiefly measured in its vocabulary. It's easy to exaggerate the importance of the differences that can be readily pointed out. The American ongoing to England or the British traveler on arriving in America is likely to be impressed by them because each finds the other's expressions amusing when they do not actually cause puzzlement. An example of such differences, the words connected with the railroad and the automobile are often cited. The British word for railroad is railway. The engineer is a driver. The conductor is a guard. The baggage car is a van. The baggage carried is always luggage. American freight train and freight yard become in Britain goods train and goods yard. Some of the more technical terms are likewise different. A sleeper in the United States is a sleeper car, a sleeping car. In Britain, it is what Americans call a tie. Here are some differences in between American English and British English as far as the vocabularies are concerned. In American English is switch, in British English is a point. In American English, grade crossing. In British English, level crossing. Regarding automobile, in British English, it's a lorry. In American English, it's a truck. In British English, windscreen. In American English, windshield. In British English, bonnet. In American English, is hood. British English, gear lever. American English, gear shift. British English, gearbox. American English, transmission. British English, silencer. American English, muffler. British English, boot. American English, trunk. British English, petrol. And American English, gasoline or gas. I've never heard anybody say petrol for gas in America. More examples are British English, motorway. American English, expressway. British English, dual carriageway. American English, divided highway. More examples are British English lift, American English elevator, British English post, American English mail, British English hoarding, American English billboard, British English nappy, American diaper, British spanner, American wrench, British underground, American subway, British cotton wool, American absorbent cotton, British barrister, American lawyer, British dustman, American garbage collector. Americans readily recognize the American character of ice cream soda, apple pie, popcorn, free lunch, saloon from their associations, and can understand why some of them would not be understood elsewhere. A writer in the London Daily Mail complained that an English person would find positively incomprehensible the American words such as commuter, intern, tuxedo, truck farming, realtor, mean, dumb, enlisted man, seafood, living room, door to road, and mortician. Although some of these have since become normal in British English. It's always unsafe to say what American words a British person will not understand. And there are some pairs in this list that would be pretty generally comprehended on both sides of the Atlantic. Some words have a deceptive familiarity. Laundry in America is not only the place where clothing and linen are washed, but the articles themselves. A lobbyist in England is a parliamentary reporter, not one who attempts to influence the legislative process. And a pressman for Americans is not a reporter, but one who works in the press room where a newspaper is printed. It's, of course, on the level of more colloquial or popular speech that the greatest differences are noticed. The American seems to have a genius for ephemeral coinages that are naturally quite meaningless to one who is not constantly hearing them. Colloquial language has always shown more local variation than the more formal levels of speech. There are doubtless many colloquialisms current in Shakespeare's London that would not have been understood in contemporary Stratford, where Shakespeare was born. These do not constitute the English language either in Britain or in America. It's well to remember that the written language, the difference between the British and the American use of words is often so slight that it is difficult to tell, in the case of a serious book, on which side of the Atlantic it was written. I'm sure it'll be interesting for you to see how American English is different from British English in pronunciation, vocabulary, and uses. Therefore, I have posted here some more videos for you to watch, enjoy, and learn the differences. You can also do the same with Australia and New Zealand, where English is spoken as the first language and their pronunciation, vocabulary, and uses show remarkable differences. You can utilize standard news channels, movies, documentaries, or other YouTube services for authentic videos to find samples of native speakers from Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. You can take it further into your research to explore the English spoken in the Caribbean, India, Nigeria, South Africa, and so on. I will try to post more videos for you, which will be interesting to you. Okay, folks, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching patiently. The content of this video is drawn from your textbook, A History of the English Language. Please read the chapter English Language in America and let me know if you have any questions. The discussion on Americanism will continue in the third part of the video, which is posted on Module 12. You all have a nice day.